Hello everyone, this is Ryan King, and in this Blender tutorial, we're going to be creating this tea scene right here. Now, if you'd like to help support what I do and also get the project files for this tutorial and my other tutorials, then you can do that over on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. The link is in the video description. And one more thing before we start, I wanted to thank this video's sponsor, Sketchfab. Sketchfab is a 3D model site where you can preview 3D models in your browser. You can even view them on a phone, tablet, or in AR and VR. They also have a huge 3D model store where you can purchase models and assets. You can even apply to sell your own models on the platform. Check out Sketchfab with the links in the description. Alright, now before we get started with the tutorial, there's a bunch of different resources online that I'm going to be using, like textures and things. Now, you totally don't have to use the same ones that I'm using, but I'm just going to show you the resources that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using this smoke texture right here, and we're going to be using this for the steam for the tea. And this is on Pixabay, and you can see right here, Pixabay license, free for commercial use, no attribution required, so that's really great. And then as well as that, I'm also going to be using this image here. So again, I'll leave a link in the description to all these different resources if you'd like to use them. And then again, another one, I'm going to be using this one here, and this one is a lot more steam, so this is going to be coming out of the teapot. And then also in the 3D scene, we have some like little tea leaves. So I'm going to be using this picture right here of this leaf. I think it's basil, but it looks really great for some tea leaves. So I'm going to be using this resource as well. And this will be our texture for our tea leaves. And then also on the teacups, there is some writing right here. So this is like some Chinese calligraphy. I think it's also called kanji. And in the Chinese language, I believe this says air, because you can see it says air right here. So I'm going to be downloading this one. And then also for our other teacup, I'm going to be downloading this one as well. And I believe this means earth, because you can see it says earth right there. Now, once we download these, I'm going to be editing them slightly because I just want to add a little bit of wear and tear to them and make it look like maybe they just got slightly rubbed off of the teacup. And what I'm going to do is use a brush in Krita to just make some of the edges look like they're a little bit worn away. So that's totally optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. But if you have some sort of 2D program, then you could follow along and do that as well. I just think that it makes the final scene look a little more realistic. And then over here on cc0textures.com, I'm going to be using some of their textures. So for the fabric on the table, I'm going to be using this fabric 030, and I'm going to be downloading the 2K version. So this is a free texture on cc0textures.com. So again, link is in the description. And then also for that little wooden board that the tea is on, I'm going to be using this wood 050. And again, this is on cc0textures.com. Link is in the description. And I'm going to be downloading the 4K JPEG. And then the last resource online that I'm going to be using, very fitting for this scene, I'm going to be using this Chinese garden Hdri, and this is on Hdri Haven. So if you haven't heard about Hdri Haven, it's a super awesome website where you can get very high quality HDRIs, and this is going to be the lighting for our scene. So I just downloaded the 1K version because that's all we need. We're just going to need the lighting data, and so if it's a 1K texture, it'll render faster because it's smaller than these bigger textures. So I'll just download the 1K texture. And those are all the resources that I'm going to be using. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to Krita. You could use another 2D program if you have one, or you can just skip this step if you don't want to follow along in this part. But what I'm going to do in Krita is just use a brush to make this calligraphy look like it's a little bit old and a little bit worn. Alright, so I've opened up this texture in Krita. Again, this is totally optional, but you can do this if you'd like a little more realism. So I'm just going to go to the brush right here, and I'm just going to make my brush bigger. And then there's this really cool brush in Krita that I like to use. It's this one right here. What I'm going to do, and I'm just using my mouse for this, you could use a drawing tablet if you'd like to, but I'm just using my mouse. So what I'm going to do is turn the opacity way down, and I'm going to click on this button to turn the eraser on. And then what I'll do is I'll just start to tap, and you can see what I'm doing. I'm basically just erasing some of these areas, maybe turn the opacity even more down, and I'm just going to start to tap along, especially on the edges. And I'm just going to go like this and erase some areas. So if you can do this, this is really cool. It will make it a bit more realistic, but you don't have to if you don't want to. If you have some other 2D program other than Krita, hopefully you can find some kind of cool brush like this. Okay, so I'm just going along here, maybe making some bigger areas too. So it just looks like it's a little bit erased. Maybe do some bigger areas where they're even more white, something like that. All right, so that is it. That is basically what I'm going to do. So now I'll just go File, and I will just save this. And I'll just override it because that's totally fine. I don't mind overriding it. All right, so now I'll just close this. And I'm going to open up the other one, the earth one right here, and I'll basically just do the same thing. So I'm just going to go along here. Oop, the opacity is really big, so I'm going to turn it down. Just go along here, kind of tapping, and just adding a little bit of wear and tear to those letters. Really, you don't need to overthink it. Just something like that is great. All right, so that's good. So now I'll just go File and save this again. All right, just save that. Okay, so that's done. Now we can hop into Blender and start creating the scene. All right, so here I am in a new scene in Blender. Now, if you want to see what buttons I'm pressing, I have this Screen Cascades add-on right down here in the corner so that you can see what buttons I'm pressing. And also the timeline, I'm not going to be using this, so to get rid of the timeline, I'm just going to click right here, drag up, drag down, and then let go, just so that we have a little bit more room. All right, I'm going to double tap A and then press X to delete everything. Now, before we start, I might as well save this Blender file, so I'm just going to go File, and then just click on Save As. And I'm just going to save this in a folder as ttutorial.blend, and I'll just save this file. All right, and then I'll just press Control S while I'm working on the scene to save it. So first I'm just going to press Shift A and I'm going to add a plane, and this is just going to be the table, and then we'll add the cloth material onto this. I'll also press Shift A and I'm going to add a cube, and I'll tab into edit mode, and then I'll press S and Z, and I'm just going to scale this way down, and then just press G and Z and bring it up. So this is going to be that little wooden piece that the T is on. I'm also going to press 3 to go to the face select, just select this face, and I'll press G and Z and just bring it down a little bit because I don't want it to be super thick. Just something like that. All right, now I also want to have sort of like a roof over the top of this, and that'll kind of help with the lighting to make it look more like it's actually in some sort of room. And then we're going to make it look like maybe there's a window with the sun shining in. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to add another cube, and I will just scale this up, and then I'll also scale it on the x-axis, so S and X, and just scale this up like this, and then just scale the whole thing up a little bit, just something like that. All right, maybe bring this up. Now I'm going to tab into edit mode and press 3 and go to the face select, and I'm just going to select this face and then X and delete faces, and then also this one I'm going to click on this face, X and delete faces, and then this one over here, X and delete faces. So this is just going to help us with our lighting. I'll show you what it does later in the video. All right, now I also want to add a camera, so I'll press Shift A and I'll go right down here to camera, just add a camera, and then we can just move to wherever we want the camera to be. So I want the camera to be somewhere around here, and then I will press Control Alt Numpad 0, and that's going to bring the camera to where we are. Now I can press G to move the camera around if I want to move it a bit. Now I want to render a square image, so what I'm going to do, right over here on the resolution, the bottom one right here, the Y, I'm going to change this to 1920 so that they're both 1920 by 1920. All right, now I can move the camera in a bit more, so I'm going to press G and then double tap Z, and that's going to just bring the camera in a bit. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now this piece right here, I actually want it to be a little bit longer, so I'm going to tab into edit mode, press A to select everything, and then I'll press S and X, and we'll just bring that out a little bit, something like that. Now this camera right here, if I select the camera and I go to the camera settings, the focal length here, the default is set to 50. I actually want to make this a little bit bigger because I find that it just looks a little bit better. So I'm going to actually change this up to something like 80. And that's going to make it look like it's zooming in, but I just think it looks a little bit better. So now we can just zoom out by pressing G and double tapping Z, and we'll just pull that out a little bit. Back out to something like this. Totally optional, but I just think that focal length looks a little bit better. All right, now if I click on this wooden piece right here, tab into edit mode, I think I want to bring this up just slightly so it's a little bit thicker. Tab back into object mode. All right, now you can see the edges, they're very, very sharp, so I want to smooth those edges out. So I'm going to click right over here on the modifiers, and I'm going to click on add modifier, and I'm going to add the bevel modifier. Now the segments, I'm going to turn this up to 3, and then the amount here, you can hold down the shift key while you just move this amount, and that's going to change the size of the bevel. So I'm just going to change it to something like this, and then I'll also just shade this object smooth, and then you can also just change this. Just get it how you like. Something like that is going to be great. All right, now I'm going to actually use a Blender add-on. It's built into Blender to add the teacup. So what I'm going to do is go edit, and then I'm just going to go right here to the preferences. Now right over here on the add-ons, I'm going to add in a few different Blender add-ons. The first thing that I'm going to do is start to type in extra, and you can see that there's this add mesh extra objects. And this is going to add some extra objects that we can add into Blender, and I'm going to be adding in a teacup into Blender. So there's actually a teacup 3D model built into Blender, so I'll be using that. Now later on in the video, I'm also going to be using the Node Wrangler. So just type in Node, just turn on the Node Wrangler. This is for when we're going to be doing the compositing and also the shader nodes. And then also later in the video, to add in the smoke or the steam, I'm going to be using the images as planes add-on, so turn that on as well. All right, and then you can just close the user preferences. All right, so with that add-on turned on now, I can press Shift-A and go to Mesh, and you can see that right down here, there are all these other extra objects. So I'm going to go right down here to this extras and then go right down here, and you can see that there's this teapot plus. I'm just going to click on this, and you can see that Blender adds in a teapot for us. So the modeling is already almost done for the teapot. We are going to be doing a little bit of editing to make it look a little bit different. Now, of course, if you want to make your own teapot, you can totally go ahead and model your own, but I'm just going to be using this one. So I'll just scale this teapot down, and then I'm also going to shade it smooth. I'll press 1 to go to front view, and I'm going to press G and Z and just bring it up so that it's sitting on that wood piece right there. All right, and then it's a little bit rough right now, so I'm going to press Control 2, that's the shortcut key for adding a subdivision surface, to smooth it out. All right, now there's a few different things that I want to do to this teapot. I want to make this part kind of round, and then also you can see that the top lid of the teapot, it just needs to be bigger because it's a little bit too small. And then also this part right here, I want to be a little bit higher up and a little bit smaller. And then I also want to change the shape of the handle. So let's just press 1 to go to front view. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and we can just start by doing the top part right here. So I'm going to press 1 to go to the vertex select and just select this top vertice, and then I'll just press X and delete vertices. I can now hold down the Alt key and select this loop, and then I'll just press S and scale it up a little bit just to make it a little bit thicker. And then also I can hold down the Shift and Alt key and select this loop, and we'll scale it up on the Z-axis a little bit. All right, just Alt select this loop now, and I'll press E to extrude. Click with my middle mouse wheel to constrain it to the Z-axis, and then I'll just scale it down. E to extrude, Z on the Z-axis, S to scale, and then I'll just press F to fill that. So what we want to do is we kind of want to make this a circular shape. Right now that's a little bit sharp, so I'm going to tab into edit mode, Alt select this loop, double tap G, and that's going to activate the edge slide, and I'll just slide it down, and then I can just press S and scale that up a little bit. All right, let's see how that's looking. I think what I'm going to do is go into wireframe and just press B for the box select and select the entire thing, and then just press S and Z, bring that up a little bit, click to place that, and then G and Z and bring the whole thing up a little bit. All right, let's see how that's looking. That's pretty good. All right, let's also thicken up the lid. So I'm going to tab into edit mode again, press 1 to go to the vertex select, and then holding down the Alt key, you can click right here and select this loop. And then I'm also going to hold down the Shift and Alt key and select this loop. All right, I'm going to press S and scale this up. All right, that's good. And then I can just press Shift and Alt again and deselect this loop. So we just have this one loop. Let's press 1 to go to the front view, and I'll press Z and move over to go into wireframe. And then I'll press E to extrude, click with my middle mouse wheel, and just bring that down. Tab back into object mode, let's see how that's looking. Okay, that's pretty good, but I want to scale the entire lid up, so I'll tab back into edit mode. And then I'm just going to press A and make sure everything is deselected, and I'll hover my mouse over the lid, and then I'll press L, and that's going to select all the linked vertices. So now I can press G to grab, Z on the Z-axis, bring it up, and then S to scale and bring that out a little bit, just so that that lip is connecting, just like that. All right, that looks really good. Let's press 1 for front view. I'm going to go right over here. So you can see there's a few problems right here, like this thing. That's a problem, so let's go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and you can see this vertex is connected, but then these are not. What I'm going to do here is with this vertex selected, I'm going to press V, and that is going to rip it. So now it's a separate vertex, and then I'll just click to place that. I can now press Alt and select this loop, press 1 to go to front view, and I can press G to grab and just kind of stick it inside the teapot. And then I'll also press Alt and select this loop, rotate it over, G to grab, and we're just going to shape the teapot, just shape that handle because I don't really like how the handle shape is right now. So I'm just holding down the Shift and Alt key and selecting these loops, and then just rotating them over a little bit. Rotate that over. And then also I'm going to press L to select the entire thing, press G to grab, and just push it in a little bit. All right, that is a lot better. I like how that is. You can play around with the shape and get it to how you like. Now also the front here, I'm going to tab into edit mode, press A to deselect everything, and then this also is a separate object. And I want this to be merged because in real life this would be merged. It wouldn't just be going through. So I'm going to press L to select all this. Now why I'm not doing that for this side is because you're not really going to see that. So I'm not really going to worry about merging these together. But this side you are going to see that. So this would look a little bit unrealistic if it's not merged together. So I'm going to press L with my mouse over this, and that's going to select the spout. And then I'll press 1 for front view. Now what I want to do is I want to merge it in between this vertice and this vertice. So I'm going to press G to grab, S to scale, and R to rotate. And I'm just going to stick this right in here, just so that it's barely small enough to fit in between these two. So just something like that. All right, so now you can see that it's fitting in between this one and this one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press 3 to go to the face select, and I'll just select this face, and then I'll hold down the shift key and select this face, and this face, and this face. Now what I can do is I can press X to delete, and I'm going to delete faces. So now the faces are deleted, and now what we can do is we can just fill faces in here to merge them together. So I'm going to press 1 to go to the vertex select. I'm just going to start to select these vertices. So I'll select this one, hold down the shift key, select this one, and this one, and then I'll press F to fill a face. Now, when you're making a face, it's best if you can use 4 vertices to make a face. Most of the places around here I can, but some places I'll have to use 3 vertices to make a face. So that's totally fine, but most of the time, try to make a face with 4 vertices. So I'm just going to hold down the shift key, select these, and then I'll just press F to fill that. And then I can just select these 4, F to fill that. And then I'm just going to select these 3, and then just press F to fill that. And then this one, I can just select these 4, and then press F to fill a face. So now we just need to do the other side. So shift select these, F to fill a face, shift select these 3, F to fill that face. Oop, I selected the wrong one. Let me go into wireframe and then shift select these so I can see them a little bit better. All right, F to fill that face. You might need to go into wireframe and then select some of them. So shift select these, F to fill that face, shift select these 4, F to fill that face, and then we'll just hold down the shift key, select these 4, and F to fill that face. All right, if you tab into object mode, you can see that's looking pretty good, but it's very, very smooth around here, like it's kind of curving, and I want it to be a little bit straighter. I want to tighten that edge up, so I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and I'll press Control R to add a loop cut, and then I'll click to place that loop cut, and then drag it way down, and then click to place that. So you can see now that edge is very sharp. All right, so that is really good. Now that is kind of weird that this is like coming way up. So I'm going to press 1 to go to front view. We'll just tab into edit mode. I'm going to press A to deselect everything, and then I'll just press Z to go into wireframe. So press Z and move your mouse over. We'll go into wireframe. And then I'm going to press C, and C is going to bring up the circle select. Now, if I scroll my mouse wheel, I can change the size of this, and then I can just click and drag, and I'm going to select all of these. And then I can just press escape, and that'll get rid of the circle select. So now I can press R to rotate, G to grab, and we're just going to change the position of this and change the scale. I think I want to alt select this and scale the whole thing down. And then if you want to erase things with the C select, you can press C, and then you can click with your middle mouse wheel and drag, and that's going to erase things. Or not erase them, but deselect them. So now I can just rotate this and just kind of get it to the shape that I want. I want this to kind of be somewhat flat. I do like that curve that I had. Let me just Control Z that, because I did like that kind of curve there, how it kind of curves around. So let me just box select these and rotate that over a little bit. Move this in. All right, that is pretty good. I think I want it to be just slightly lower though. So I'm just going to press C for the circle select. Just maybe bring this down. Bring this whole thing down a little bit. Bring that closer. All right, just something like that. All right, that is really good. Now just one more thing that I want to do to this teapot. You can see right in here, you can kind of see the other side. So I just need to extrude this back in more. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, alt select this loop, if I can even see it. There we go, that loop right there. I'll press 1 to go to front view, Z and go into wireframe, and I'll just press E to extrude. Just kind of bring that in, and then E to extrude, S to scale. You could rotate it as well, and then E to extrude, just like that. So now if I go back into object mode, you can see that's just going way down in, and we're not going to see way in there. We're just going to see kind of like that. So that will work great. All right, I'm going to press 0 to go to the camera view. And I'll also just press Ctrl S again to save our blend file. All right, now this teapot here, I'm going to scale it up a little bit. And then I think I'll rotate it over a little bit. And then I want to bring it over and back a little bit. So I'll press G to grab. And then I already know that it's at the right position up and down, but I want to bring it kind of back. What I can do is I can press Shift Z. And what that's going to do is it's not going to move it on the Z axis, but it's still going to move it on the X and Y axis. So I can just kind of bring this back, just something like that. And then just click to place that. All right, that is fine. And there we go. So our scene is starting to come together now. Let's add the lighting now. So I'm going to go right over here to the world. And then right here on the color, I'm going to click on this and change it to environment texture. And then I'll click on open. All right, and then here's the Chinese garden Hdri that I'm going to be using. Link is in the description if you'd like to download the same one that I'm using. So I'm just going to double click on this to open it. And then I'll just press Z and move my mouse up to go into rendered view. Now you can see that it's rendering all the stuff around here, and we don't really need it to render all the stuff around here. I just want to see what's in the camera view. So in the camera, I'm going to press Ctrl B and just drag a box around the camera, and that's going to add this boundary so it will only render what's in the camera view. All right, now there's a few problems here. It's way too strong, and also it's pointed in the wrong direction. So we can play around with this. Now actually the strength here, I'm going to leave it at 1. It may look too strong right now, but once we add materials, it'll look less strong. It's just that everything is white right now, so it looks super bright. There is one thing that I'm going to do though. I'm going to click right up here and then go down here to the color management. Now because this is a photorealistic scene, I want to use the filmic view transform. And what that's going to do is it's going to make more accurate lighting, and you can already see that it's less bright. So if you use the filmic color management, that's going to make more realistic lighting. And then right here, the look, if you change this to very high contrast, that's just going to pop out the colors and make the scene look a little bit nicer. All right, now you can see that the light is coming from the wrong direction. I want the light to be up here and be coming down. Instead, it's kind of coming from our view. So what we can do is we can click over here on the shading tab. And then right here, see how this says object? I'm going to change this to world. And you can see that the world actually has its own nodes. And so we can actually edit this and change the rotation of the world. So I did add in the Node Wrangler add-on. So with that node enabled, I can just click on this Chinese garden, Hdri, and then I can press Ctrl T. And what that's going to do is going to add this texture coordinate and mapping. So let me just press 0 to go into the camera view, and we'll just press Z and move my mouse up to go into rendered view. So what we can do is we can actually use this mapping to change the location, rotation, and scale of the Hdri. So what I want to do is I just want to rotate it so that the light is pointing in the opposite direction. So this Z right here, if I start to turn this value, it's going to rotate the Hdri on the Z axis. So I'll just rotate this around, and I believe somewhere around 190 looks pretty good. So there you go. If you change this to 190, it's totally flipped it, and that is the lighting that we want. Now I'm going to play with it even more because I want the lighting to be a little bit more this way. So I think something like that's pretty good. So if you want to change this to 177 or something, just change it to whatever you want. If you want the lighting to be kind of going on a different angle, you could change that. If you want the lighting to be going that way, whatever you want to do, I'm just going to do something like that. All right, let's press Ctrl S to save again. So now the lighting is set up. So I'm going to go back to the layout, and we can just go back into solid view. So now let's go ahead and model those cups. So let me just zoom out here. Now this rooftop thing, it's going to kind of get in the way when we're modeling. So I'm just going to select it, and then I'll just press H to hide it. So it's still there, but it's just hidden from our view. If you want to get it back, you can press Alt H, and that'll unhide any hidden objects. I'm just going to press H to hide it though, because I don't really want to see it right now. All right, let's just zoom in here. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to click right here on circle to add in a circle, and this is going to be our cup. So I'll just press G and Z, bring that up, and then I'll just press S to scale and scale it down. And I think I'll also press G and click with my middle mouse wheel and just bring it over a little bit. And then I'll press 1 to go to front view. All right, so now we can start to model this cup. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and we are in the vertex select right here. If you just click right here, I'm going to press E to extrude and then press Z on the Z axis. Just bring it down, and then I'll press S and scale it up, and then E to extrude, Z on the Z axis, S and scale it just slightly up, and then I'll press E to extrude, Z on the Z axis, bring it down, and then just start to scale it in a little bit, and then just extrude it again, scale it down, E to extrude, and then scale that down, maybe bring that up a little bit. So we're just basically making this shape right here. And I think I'll select the whole thing and press S and Z, just squash it down a little bit. All right, so there's our cup so far. Let's shade this object smooth. All right, now the bottom here, we need to fill a face in the bottom. So I'm gonna hold down the Alt key and select this loop, and then I'll press F to fill a face. And then also we are going to be adding a Subdivision Surface modifier. So I know that I'm going to need to press I to inset the face, and that way we won't have any stretching on the bottom when we add a Subdivision Surface. Let's tab back into Object Mode now, and to add a Subdivision Surface, I can press Ctrl 2. And that is the shortcut key for a subsurf. And you can see if you zoom way in, there's just a slight bit of stretching, but because we insetted this face here, you can barely see it. So that is totally fine. All right, let's go over to the modifiers. So you can see we added a subsurf, so it kind of smooths out the cup, but the cup has no thickness, and so that's a problem. So to add thickness, let's click on Add Modifier, and we're going to add the Solidify Modifier. And then also, I want the Solidify Modifier to come first before the subdivision. So right here, if you click on this little button right here and drag up, and then let go, you can see that now it's brought it up, and so it does the solidify before it does the subdivision. Now the thickness right here on the solidify, if you hold down the shift key and click and drag, you can see that you can make this more thick. So I'm just going to thicken that up just like that, and there we go. So that is basically the modeling for our cup. Pretty easy to do. So now we can just press S to scale, bring this cup down, G and Z, we're just going to bring this cup down. We can also go into the camera view and just kind of compare the size of it. I think something like that's pretty good. G and Z, we'll just bring it down and just rest it on the ground there. All right, that is great. Now, before we start duplicating this cup and everything, I want to add the object for the T inside the cup. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and select this loop. And then I'll just press Shift D to duplicate, S to scale, and just scale it a little bit down, and then click to place that. Now I want to separate this into its own object so that we can add a separate T material to it. So I'm going to press P, and then I'm going to click on selection so it separates everything that's selected into its own object. So I can tab into object mode now and just select this, and you can see it's its own object. Now the T object, I don't want it to have a solidify, so I'll just click X and delete that. All right, I'll press 1 to go to front view, and I'll go into wireframe, and now I can press G and Z and just kind of bring it down. Tab into edit mode, we're just going to press A to select everything, and then I'll just press S and scale that up. All right, so now I'll press E to extrude, Z on the Z axis, S to scale, E to extrude, Z on the Z axis, and then S to scale. We're just going to make that T inside the cup, so we'll extrude that out, scale it down, just making an object for our T. All right, tab back into object mode, let's take a look at this. All right, and then if you go right up here, you can see we need to fill a face, so I'm going to press F to fill that. And then you can see it's really stretched right here, and that will actually cause issues kind of when you look inside the T. It'll give a weird look. So I'm going to press I, and I will inset that face so we have a face within a face, and then just click to place that. All right, now we need to Alt select this loop up here, and I'll press E to extrude, S to scale, and we'll just start to scale this down just slightly. Click to place that, and then we can press F to fill that face. Now you can see it again, there's a little bit of stretching right here. So if I just tab into edit mode, I'm going to press I, and that will inset the face and just scale it down a little bit, and then we can tab back into object mode. All right, and then we can shade this object smooth. Now I believe the normals need to be recalculated, so I'm just going to tab into edit mode, press A and make sure everything's selected, and then to recalculate the normals, I'm going to press Shift N. There we go, that looks correct. So basically the object was kind of flipped inside out, so we just need to flip that, and now we won't have any shading issues or anything. All right, so that is really good. So there is our T and our cup, so I'm just going to select the T, Shift select the cup, and then I can just press G to grab, and then again Shift Z, and that way it'll just move around on the X and Y but not on the Z, and just place this wherever you want, somewhere over here. And then I think I want to scale the T up actually a little bit. I think it would be better if the T cups were a little bit bigger. So now that I've scaled up the teacups, I also need to kind of bring them up. So I'm going to press G to grab, Z on the Z axis, and just bring that up a little bit. All right, that is good. So now I can just select both of these again. We'll press 0 to go into the camera view. And I want to make 3 teacups. Of course, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, Shift Z, and we'll just bring it over. So this one I'm going to bring about there. And then Shift D, Shift Z, so Shift D to duplicate, Shift Z to make it go on the X and Y, but not the Z. And we'll just bring this one right over there. I'm just taking a look at my reference and trying to get it the same. All right, just click to place that. And then this one, I think I want to also bring this over a little bit more, just something like that. All right, now these teacups, I want some of the tea to be a little bit more full and then some cups to have less tea. So to do that, I'm just going to select this, press 1 to go to the front view. We'll tab into edit mode. I'm going to press Z to go into wireframe, and then I can deselect everything and just press B, and we'll just box select the top here. And then I can just press G to grab, Z on the Z axis, and push it down a little bit. Just bring it down, and then just click to place that. So now back in object mode, you can see that this has a little bit more T, whereas this has a little bit less. And we'll do the same thing for this. So I'm just going to go to front view, tab into edit mode, we'll just go into wireframe. I'll just box select this and just bring it down a little bit. All right, there we go. So now it's just a little bit more uneven, and it just adds a little bit more realism to the scene. All right, so the modeling is almost done. Let's just press Z and move up to go into rendered view. Now in the final image, we have sort of like some blinds, and also it kind of looks like maybe there's a wall with like a window or something. So let's go ahead and create that. So basically what I did is right over here, I just modeled some objects, and then those objects casted a shadow over the scene, and it makes it look more realistic. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to start by adding a cube. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'll press S to scale, X on the X axis, and just scale this way down so it's really thin. And then I can press 7 to go to top view, and I just want this to be kind of over here. So I'll press G to grab, move it over, and then S and scale it down even more. And then if I go over here, I can press S and Z, and we're just going to scale this up really, really big. So it's kind of like some blinds maybe on a window or something, like some vertical blinds, something like that. All right, let's press 7 now to go back to top view. Now I want to rotate this over, so I'm going to press R to rotate, and I'm going to type in 45 and then enter. And that way it's just rotated over by 45 degrees. And actually, I want it to be the other 45 degrees, so I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo that. I'll press R to rotate, and then I'll type in negative 45 degrees, and that way it's just rotated over a little bit. Now I want to have 4 different blinds, so I'll press Shift D, bring this over, click to place that, Shift D, and then click with your middle mouse wheel just to bring it over, click to place that, and then I'll press Shift D again, click with my middle mouse, and then click to place that. Now the last part right over here, I want this to kind of look like maybe a wall that's covering up the sunlight. So I'll press Shift D, click to place this, R to rotate, move it over, and then I'll press S and X, and we'll just make that really long, and then just press G, click with your middle mouse and bring it over. So this is what we have, and this will make it look like there is like some blinds and a wall over there in the part of the scene that we can't see. So I'm just going to scale this whole thing down, and then I'll move it kind of over here. And then really we just need to go into rendered mode and play around with this. So I think I want this to be farther back. All right, and then I can just press R to rotate, Z on the Z axis, and just rotate it. And you can see that it kind of gets thicker and thinner. So you're just gonna need to play around with this to get it to how you like it. You can see that it's not quite long enough, so I'm gonna press S and Z and just make it a lot taller. And I want it to be slightly going over the wooden piece right there. So I'm just going to move it to something like that. And then I want to be able to see like that wall there, or the shadow of the wall. So it looks like there's like maybe some blinds and then there's a wall there. All right, that is really good. Now I want to do the same thing over here. So if I just go back out into solid view, I'm just going to select this, and I'll press Shift D and duplicate it and bring it over here. Now I don't want any wall for this one, so I'm going to tab into edit mode and just select this. You can press A to deselect everything, then press L and that'll select all the linked vertices, and then just press X and delete faces. All right, tab back into object mode, and I'm going to just move this one over, and then let's just go into rendered mode again, just see how this is going. And I just want to move this around. Let's see here, maybe make these a little bit thinner and then just put them over here. I'm just kind of looking at my reference to kind of see, try to get it to look good. And then also if you want to rotate it on the Z axis by pressing R and Z, you can change kind of the height and the strength of those shadows. All right, something like that, I think that is pretty good. So it gives it a very natural feel, and it feels like maybe you're in a room with like a window, and then there's some morning sunlight shining into the room. Just press Ctrl S again to save your project. All right, so the modeling is almost done. We just need to go ahead now and model those tea leaves. So I'm going to press Shift C to center the 3D cursor, and I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to start with a plane. I'll now press G and Z and bring the plane up so that we can see it. And then I'll just press S and scale it down. Let's press 7 to go to top view, and I'm just going to tab into edit mode. So I just want to model a basic leaf shape. So I'm going to press Ctrl R and then just right click and then left click so that there's a loop cut right in the very center there. And then I'll press S to scale. I'm going to click on X to scale it on the X axis, and I'll just bring that up. All right, that is really good. So now I'm going to press Ctrl R, add a loop cut here, so left click and then right click so it's in the center, and then I'll just press S and Y and just bring that up a little bit as well. All right, and then the center of the leaf, I want that to just be dipping down a little bit, so I'll press Ctrl R, click, bring that over, and then click to place that, and then Ctrl R, click, bring that over, and then click to place that. So now I can Alt select this loop in the middle, and I can press G to grab, Z on the Z axis, and just push it down a little bit, and that way we just have a little bit of a dip there. All right, now if you just zoom right over here, I want to make the stem for the leaf, so let's just select this loop and then hold down the Shift key and select these other two. I'll press 7 to go to top view, zoom in here, and I'm going to press E to extrude, S to scale, R to rotate, and then again E to extrude, just something like that, just so that we have a little stem there for our leaf. All right, let's press 1 for front view. I'm going to tab into edit mode, Z, and move my mouse over to go into wireframe, and then I'll press B and just box select the center, and I'll press G and Z and bring that up. Oh, and we have this selected too, so I'll press B and then click with my middle mouse wheel and then deselect that. So I can press G and Z now and just bring that up a little bit so that our leaf kind of curves a little bit. And then I'll also press Ctrl R, left click, and then right click to add a loop cut there, G and Z to bring that up. And I'll do the same thing here, Ctrl R, just click to place that, and then I'll press G and Z, bring that up. Let's shade this object smooth now, and then we also need to add a subdivision surface. So the shortcut key is Ctrl 2. That'll add a subdivision surface right there. And this is already looking a lot more like a leaf. Now I'm also going to just select a few of these vertices. Just select these and press G and Z and bring them down a little bit, just so that that's curving a little bit more. I think I also might press Ctrl R, add a loop cut in there and bring it up a little bit, and then Ctrl R and add a loop cut and just bring that up a little bit. All right, there we go. Now I want to add a little bit of noise to this leaf, so I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and I'm going to add the Displace Modifier. Now we need to add a texture to displace it, so I'm just going to click on New here, and then you can just click on this button or go over to the texturing panel. Now right now it's set to image or movie, and we haven't added an image or movie. What I want to do is just click on this and change it to cloud. So now you can see it's displacing it using this procedural cloud texture in Blender. It's basically a noise texture. Now the scale here, I'm going to turn this way down so that it has a lot more noise, just something like that. That's really, really small. And then let's go back to the modifiers, and this is really, really bumpy and sharp. So the strength here, I'm going to turn this way down to something around a 0.12, just something like that. So it's very, very subtle, but it will help to make it look a little bit more organic. All right, now it still is a little bit low quality, so I'm going to add another subdivision surface. So I'm going to click on Add Modifier, add a subdivision surface, and then just change these both, the levels and viewport, just change that to 1. And that'll just add a little bit more detail in there. All right, so the modeling for that is almost done. I do just want to give it a little bit of thickness because of course it's not absolutely paper thin. So I'm going to click on Add Modifier. We will add the Solidify Modifier, and then you can just play around with the thickness. I just want to make it very, very slightly thick. So something like that is pretty good. All right, Control S again to save our project. We'll just scale this down, and for now, just kind of bring it over to the side. When we set up the material for this, we will then duplicate it around. All right, so the modeling is finished. Let's go ahead and do all the materials now. So to do the materials, I'm going to go over to the Shading tab. All right, and we'll just go into Rendered mode. So I'm first just going to select the ground plane, and then right now we are using the World node, so I'm going to click right here, and then click on Objects so that we can edit the object nodes. So now I'm going to click on New here, and I'm going to call this Cloth. You could also call it Fabric, something like that. Now, because we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on, there's a really cool feature with the Node Wrangler. If you just select the principled BSDF, you can press Control, Shift, and T. And what that's going to do is going to bring up a file browser, and you can just select the materials and then automatically set up the material. So I'm just going to select the fabric color and then hold down the Control key and just select the fabric normal and the fabric roughness. Now, link is in the description if you want to download the same fabric textures that I'm going to be using. And then once you download the texture, you're just going to need to extract the zip file and then just locate to wherever you've saved the texture and just select the color, the roughness, and the normal. And then you right down here, you can click on Principled Texture Setup. So you can see it's automatically set up the material for us. So that can save us a lot of time. Now, if you're still somewhat of a beginner to Blender and you don't properly know how to set up materials, then I would definitely recommend watching a tutorial and learning how to set up materials properly, because it is important that you know why Blender is doing this, why Blender is doing what it's doing, like why it's connecting these up here and why it's adding this normal map and all that kind of stuff. But I do this pretty much every day and I know why this is all set up, so I know how to manually set up a material. And so if I use this Node Wrangler feature, it really helps to speed up my workflow. But I would definitely recommend learning how to manually set up a texture so that you understand what Blender is doing. Alright, so you can see this fabric texture, it's way too big. We need to make it a lot smaller. Now you could go to the UV editing and just change the UVs, but there's an easier way to do this. I'm just going to zoom over here and you can see that there is this scale here on the mapping. What I'm going to do is click, drag down, and then I'm going to drag back and forth. And you can see that it's scaling that texture up and making the cloth a lot smaller. So I'm just going to zoom in here, just kind of look at it, click, drag down, and then drag to the left and right, and just get it to the size that you want. Cloth is pretty small, so something like that is probably going to be good. All right, now I want it to be a white cloth. I don't want it to be this like gray cloth. So I'm just going to edit the color right here. So this is the color texture and it's going into the base color. So if we edit the colors before it goes into the principled, then that'll make it lighter or darker or whatever colors we want to do. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for a color ramp node. I'm just going to drop the color ramp node right here. And then because we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on, you can hold on the Control and Shift key and click on the color ramp. And what that's going to do is going to add this viewer node and you can preview what the node is seeing. So I'm going to click on this black value and click on this tab right here. And I'm going to turn this up to like a gray color, just something like that. And then I also want to bring this white tab. If I click on the white tab, I want to bring it closer to the gray so that there's more contrast. So I'm just going to bring it closer and closer, something like that. And then this gray color, if I click back on the gray color, I think I might make it a little bit darker just so that there's a little bit more contrast. But overall, I do want this to be kind of a white cloth. So now if I hold down the Control and Shift key and click back on the principled, we can preview that material and that is looking really great. Now it's a little bit bumpy right now. So right here on the normal map, the strength here, right now it's set to 1. If I change the strength to 0.5, it's only going to be half as bumpy. And I definitely think that looks better. Also the scale here, I think I might just turn this down a little bit. I'm just gonna have to play around with this and get it to how you like. I think that's pretty good. All right, so that material is done. Let's click on the wooden one. We're gonna click on new and I can just call this wood. And then the principled right here, I can click on this and again, I can press Control Shift T. And then again, link is in the description if you'd like to download the same wood texture that I'm using. So extract the zip file and then I'm gonna select the color, hold down the Control key and select the normal and the roughness maps of all of the wood texture. And then we can just click on Principled Texture Setup and it's going to automatically set up the material and look at that. Now on the normal here, if you zoom in, it does look a little bit rough and bumpy. So the strength here, I'm going to change this to maybe like a 0.5 so it's only half as strong, just so that it's a little bit more of a smoother wood. All right, and then I want to re-UV map this. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, press A to select everything, and I'll press U, and I'm going to unwrap this Smart UV project and then just click on OK. So there we go. Now it's just UV unwrapped a little bit better. And then the scale here, I can tab back into object mode. The scale here, I'm going to click, drag down, and then I can just drag back and forth and just change the size of this. So just make it a little bit smaller, something like that. All right, now I also want this wood to just be slightly more red because I think that just looks better. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for an RGB curve. So I'm just going to drop an RGB curves node right there. Now, if you click on this R, that's going to change the red values. Now, if I click on this and drag up, you can see it's just going to boost the red values a little bit. If I drag it down, it's going to get rid of the red, but I want to add just a little bit more red. I think that just looks a little bit nicer. All right, that is looking really good. And then also, if you wanted to, you could also click on this C here, and then you could click to add a little dot, drag up, and then also click and drag down, and that'll just add a little bit more contrast to that texture. But it should be very subtle, just something like that. That looks pretty good. All right, so now let's set up the material for the pot here. So I'm just going to select the pot. We'll click on new. I'll just call it T pot. And I'm going to press Shift A here, and I'm going to search for a geometry node. I'm just going to add this in. Now what I want to do is I want to use this pointiness value to give it a little bit of variation to the color. So I'm just going to click on the pointiness and drop it into the base color. And if I just Control Shift and click on the geometry node and continue to click, you can see kind of what it's doing. So what it'll do is it will make the pointy parts of the mesh kind of come out a little bit, and it'll make it more white. And then the parts that are kind of going in, it'll make it a little bit darker. Now you can't really notice anything right now. That's because if I just Control Shift and click back on the principled, I need to make it more contrasty. So I'll press Shift A and I'm going to search for a color ramp, and I'll just drop the color ramp right in here. All right, so now if I start to drag these values out, and I'm actually going to hold down the Control and Shift key and click on the color ramp, if I start to drag these, you can start to see it. There we go. So it's making those values darker, and then on the edges, it's making those values lighter. Now I want this teacup to be blue, so I'm going to click on this white color and then just make it a nice light blue. And then this black value, I'm just going to turn this all the way up to white. All right, and then I want to just give it a little bit of almost like dirt, or just almost like it's kind of been rubbed, or is a little bit darker in some areas. So I'm going to click on plus right here, and that'll add a new tab. I'm just going to put this tab right in the middle, and I'll make it a dark brown color. Turn it way down, and you can see what it's doing. So it's making that dark area. Now, right now it's way too strong. So the white value, if I just pull this back, and then if I pull this brown value back too, you're just gonna have to play around with it. But yeah, just bring this brown value a little bit farther back, and then just kind of push this white value in and the blue value in. So basically what we want is we want it to be white right here, or a very light blue, then it gets more blue, and then just right here in these kind of crevice areas, we want it to be just a little bit brown. And then there's also a crevice right there. So now I can Control Shift and click on this, and there we go, looking very nice. Now I also just want to add a little bit of noise, so I'm going to press Shift A, search for a noise texture, we'll just drop it down here, and then using a feature from the Node Wrangler add-on, I'm going to press Control T, that'll add this texture coordinate and mapping. And I actually want to plug the object up to the vector, and that way it'll just put the noise texture around the object a little bit better. Because if I Control Shift and click on this, you can see if it's set to generated, you can see it's just a little bit stretched. It's hard to notice if I just change the scale, but if I just change it to object, it'll be placed around the object a little bit better. Now the scale here, I'm going to change this to like a 16. I think that looks pretty good. And then the detail here, I'm also going to turn that all the way up to 16, so it's very detailed. All right, now I want this to be plugged into the bump, so it just makes a slight bit of bump. So the factor right here, I'm going to plug this into the normal. Now this isn't normal data, so we need to convert it into normal data so that the principled BSDF can actually use it. So I'm going to press Shift A, search for a bump node, and then I'll plug it right in there. Now, we don't want the factor to be going into the normal, we want the factor to be going into the height. So now if I Control Shift and click on the bump, you can see that's bump data now. And if I Control Shift and click on the principled, it looks very bumpy. Now it's way too strong, so I'm going to turn down the strength, and I want the strength to be very, very subtle, so I'm going to change it down to something like a 0.025, just so that it's very, very subtle. There we go, 0.025. So if you zoom in, you can just barely see it, but it is very subtle. And then also teapots are usually pretty shiny, so I'm going to turn the roughness way down, and I'll just change the roughness down to like a 0.05, and that way it's very, very shiny. All right, so there is our teapot material. Now I want to put this teapot material on the cups as well. So what I can do is I can either select this and then click right here and click on teapot, or I can click right here and drag and drop the colors onto these other objects. All right, there we go. So now let's go ahead and do the tea material. So I'm just going to select this, click on new, and I'll just call it T. And I'm just going to select the principal and press X and delete it because I want to press Shift A and I want to search for a glass BSDF, and I'll just plug the glass BSDF up to the surface. All right, let's go into rendered mode, and I'm going to press Control B and just box select that so that we can see the T a little bit better. Now the color right here, I want to make this a T color, so I'm going to make it sort of like a kind of yellowish. You can change it to whatever color you want. I'm thinking maybe just kind of like a yellowish brown kind of color. And then I also want to add a little bit of bump, so I'm going to press Shift A, search for a noise texture, just drop the noise texture right here. And then I'm going to plug the factor up to the bump, and then again we need to convert it to normal data. So I'll press Shift A, search for a bump node, and we'll just drop the bump node right in here. And then I want the factor to be going up to the height. Now the scale, I'm going to change this to maybe around 22. If I just Control Shift click on this, you can see what it's doing. And then the detail, I'll turn that all the way up to 16. And then because it's water, I want to give it a little bit of distortion. So the distortion here, I'm going to change this to something like a 2.5. And you can see now that looks a lot more like liquid. Now if I Control Shift and click on this, it's very, very dark. The strength is way too high right now. So I'm going to change the strength to something like a 0.005. So it's very, very subtle. But it is still there, and it does make it look just a little more realistic. And then I want to just drop color this onto the other T object, so we'll just do that, and there we go, we have some nice lovely T. Now there's a few really important things that can make this look better. The IOR, if you change this value, just play around with this and get it to something that you like. I found that this value, the IOR, it really has a big effect in how it's going to look like. Because you can see if you turn it up, it's kind of more shiny. If you turn it down, it kind of looks shiny as well. And I've made this scene 4 different times because I've been practicing the tutorial. You know, I want to get the scene to look as good as possible. So I've made this 4 different times, and every time I've done it, it just looks a little bit different. And I don't really know why, but really I've just found that if you play around with this, just get it to something that looks good. The best result that I got on my other scene was an IOR value of 2.443. So if you want to punch that in, hopefully that will look good, or you can just play around with this value and just kind of get it to whatever you like. Now there's also one really important setting that can also determine how the T looks. If you just select one of the T objects and then go to the object properties, you can click down here on visibility. Now you can see that on the ray visibility, there is this shadow right here. If you turn the shadow off, you can actually see through the T a little bit better because it's not calculating any shadows in that T object. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to click on this one, turn off shadow, click on this one and turn off shadow. And you can see that it just makes the T look a little bit better. And for this specific scene, I think that an IOR of 1.543 looks a little bit better. But again, I've made this a bunch of times, 4 different times, and every time it seems to just be a little bit different. So it's not very consistent, so you're just gonna have to play around with this value to get it to look good. And also the lighting has a really big effect on how the T looks. So if you wanna play around with the lighting, that could also affect how the T looks. But I think that looks pretty nice. All right, so let's select our leaf material and we can go ahead and do this. So I'm actually going to go back into layout here. I'll press 7 for top view and I'll just kind of zoom in here because I need to UV unwrap this first. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, double tap A to select everything, and then I'm just going to press U to unwrap, and I want to project from view. So if I UV unwrap this project from view, it's just going to slap the UV layout right there from the front down, and that'll look really great. So now what I can do is go back into shading. I'm going to click on new here, and I'm just going to call this leaf. And then I'm going to press Shift A, search for an image texture. We'll just drop the image texture right here. And the color, I'm going to plug up to the base color. And then we can just click on open to open up our texture. So here is the texture that I'm going to be using. Again, link is in the description if you'd like to use this one. So I'm just going to open it up. Now if we go into rendered mode, you can see something is wrong here. We need to play around with the UV layout. So I'm going to click on UV editing, and you can see that the UV editing is definitely wrong. So I'll just press A to select everything, R to rotate, and we'll just bring it into place. I think I also need to press S and click with my middle mouse to bring it up and make it a little bit fatter. And then we'll just put it into place here. You can press B for the box select to select these different pieces. And I'm just going to kind of shape them around that leaf. Just something like that. All right, I don't want any areas to be white because that would look really weird. And I also don't want it to be stretching too much. And then also, if I just press C to go to the circle select and I select these in the middle here, I want this to be kind of in the center here. so that you can see that little crease. There we go. So that is looking really good. All right, so that's done. Let's go back over to the shading tab. Now I want to add a little bit of translucency because that will make the leaf look more realistic. So what I'm going to do down here is press Shift A, and I'm going to search for the translucent BSDF and just drop it right above the principal. And the translucency will basically let a little bit of light go through. If you've ever been outside on a sunny day and you look up at a tree and you can see that there's some light coming through the leaves, and the leaves are kind of glowing almost because there's light coming through them and they're very yellow, that is translucency. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a mix shader. We'll just drop the mix shader right here, and then I'm going to plug it up to the mix shader, and I think I'll switch these. And then this color right here, I want this to be a very yellowish color, and that way when there's light going through the object, it'll be kind of a yellowish tint. And then just play around with the factor. I think I'm going to change this to something like a 0.58, and you can play around with this later if you need to. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use this texture right here to contribute to the bump. So the color, I'm going to plug it up to the normal. I'll press Shift A, search for a bump node. We're just going to drop the bump node right in here. And then we're going to plug this up to the height. And you can see that now it's making that all bumpy. The strength here, this is too strong. So I'm going to change it down to like a 0.1 or maybe even a 0.15. And you can see it's just adding a tiny little bump, and that looks really great. All right, I'll just press Control B to see the whole thing. Let's go back to the layout now. We'll go into rendered mode. So now what I can do is I can just move this leaf around and place it in the scene. So I'm just going to press G to grab, S to scale, R to rotate, Z on the Z axis. We're just going to put this into place. So I want there to be one leaf kind of right over here, and just bring it down so it's right on the table right here. You could also scale it down on the Z axis if you want to make it a bit flatter. Scale it down a little bit. I'll press Shift D, click with my middle mouse, R to rotate, Z on the Z axis, scale this down. Let's press 7 to go to top view. I'm going to tab into edit mode. And then I also want to add a little bit of variation to these leaves. So what I'm going to do is actually delete the stem. So I'll press 7 for top view, tab into edit mode, and I'm just going to press Z to go into wireframe. I'll just box select this right here and then press X and delete vertices. And that way you can see that now there's no stem to that leaf, and that just gives it a little bit more variation. All right, that's good. I want to also add another leaf right over here. So kind of right in here. I'll rotate this around. Just put another tea leaf right there. I also want another one to be right over here. And then if you want to even give a little bit more variation, you can press S to scale, X on the X-axis, and then you can type in -1 and enter, and that's going to flip it. So now it just makes the texture look a little bit different and gives it a little more variation. And also if you want to make it a little bit kind of popping up, you can press R and Z, just kind of bring that up slightly, just something like that. All right, it's kind of going through the table right now. There we go. All right. And then I want to add 2 tea leaves in this cup and then just 1 tea leaf in this cup. So I'm going to select this one and shift select this one, Shift D to duplicate. Just move this over inside the cup, scale it down, put it inside the cup right on the tea. And I want these to be going slightly inside the tea. And because the tea is a glass material, we'll be able to see through it. So even though that's going down inside the tea, we will be able to see the tea leaves. So I'm just going to go like that, something like that. This one, I'll rotate this over and kind of place it over the top. So it's just overlapping a little bit, and just kind of stick it in the water a little bit, or in the tea a little bit. All right, let's see how that's looking. I'm going to go into rendered mode just to see how this is looking. So those are a little too big, so I'm going to rotate them over and just also scale them down a bit because they're a little bit too big. Some of these are. Some of them I want to be big, but I think overall they're just a little bit too big. I think I'll just select these and rotate them on the Z-axis, just rotate them kind of going that way. And then personally, I don't really like the stem on this one, so if I just tab into edit mode, go into wireframe, I can just select this stem, and then just press X and delete it. All right, and then I'm just going to select this one, press Shift D, we'll bring it over to this one. I just want to add one more tea leaf right here. I'll scale it up on the Z-axis just to make it so it's a little bit more lumpy, and then just stick it inside this tea right here. So now we can go ahead and add that smoke. So to add the smoke, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to go right down here to Image, and then in the preferences, we turned on the Images as Planes add-on, so you can just click on this to add those images images as planes. All right, and then just locate to wherever you save those textures. I'm going to use this one, hold down the control key, this one, and this one. Now I've actually found that if you turn these to emission, if you press the N key to open this up, if you turn this to emission, it'll actually look a little bit more like steam because it'll be more white and fluffy. So I'm going to do that. I just prefer that. And then I'll just click on import images as planes. I'll just bring these up. We'll go into rendered view. And then let's also go over to the shading tab so we can play around with these. All right, so you can see right now they're just these planes and we need to add a transparency to them. So I'm going to click and drag over to bring this over here. So you can see this is being plugged into the emission, and then the emission strength is set to 1 so that these will just be emitting a little bit of light. Now why these don't have an alpha channel is because they're just black and white, so we can actually tell the black values to be transparent. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the color and plug that into the alpha instead, because this doesn't actually have an alpha, it just has the color, and now you can see that those black values have become transparent. So let's just do that for the others. We'll click on this one, bring this over, and then the color going to the alpha, click on this one, bring this over, and then the color is going into the alpha. All right, there we go. Now you can see that this one is really strong, whereas this one is like very faint. So I'll show you how to change that. So if you want to make this one more strong, you can press Shift A, search for a color ramp. We're just going to drop the color ramp right here. And then if you take this white value and pull it out, you can see that now you can start to see that a little bit better. So that's good. Now this one is a bit too strong. So I'm going to press Shift A, again, search for a color ramp. Drop this right down here in between the alpha so that we can change the transparency of it. And then, as I said earlier, if it's black, that's making it transparent. So if we take this white value, click on the white value, and if you turn it down, you can see it's going to make it more and more transparent because it's less white and it's darker and darker. So that is really great. Now this one here, I want this to be coming out of the teapot, but you can see right here, this is really, really thick. So what I'm going to do is tab into edit mode, and I will press Control R and then scroll my mouse wheel out and just add a bunch of loop cuts, and then left click and right click to place that. And then again, I can press Control R, scroll my mouse wheel way out, and then left click and right click so that we have a lot more geometry. So then what I can do is I can just select this vertex, and then I want to scale them all down, kind of squish them together so that they can come out of a smaller area, and that way they can come out of the tea kettle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press O, and that'll turn on the proportional editing. Then what I can do, let me just give us a little bit more room here, I can press S to scale, and then I can click on X to scale on the X-axis. And let me just zoom out here so I can show you. If I press S and X, I can scroll with my scroll wheel, and that's going to change the size of the proportional editing. So I'm just going to scale that down. So see, now that's all squished together. And also if you wanted to, you could play around with the shape of this, make it a little bit random. If you want to make it a little bit more three-dimensional, you could also like just do that. So it's a little bit more three-dimensional. And then we also need to shade these objects smooth because you can see that's a little bit bumpy. So I'm just going to shift select these three objects, and then we will just shade them smooth. You can go object and click on shade smooth. All right, so now let's scale this down, rotate it over, and we'll just stick it into place. So I want it to be pointed slightly at the camera because that just looks a little bit better. And I want this to be coming out of the teapot, just like that. Okay, let's go into rendered mode and just see how this is looking. There we go, that is really cool. Looks like very natural steam. So let's do the same thing for these. So this one right here, I want this to be going over this one. So I'll just rotate it and scale it and stick it into place. Scale this up, let's just stick that right there. All right, that's looking good. Let's grab this one, we'll rotate this over. And we're going to put this one above this one right here. Just something like that, okay? And now let's go into render mode, just kind of see how that's looking. There we go, very cool. Now, there's just a few things I want to change, like this here. It's a little bit too strong again. So right here on the color ramp, this value right here, if you just turn it down a little bit more, it'll make it a little bit more transparent. And then also you could just slightly turn the emission strength up if you want it to be a little bit more white. But that will, of course, make it a little bit more visible. Just something like that. I want to make it pretty subtle. All right, that is looking really good. Now I also need to add that calligraphy there. So let's go ahead and add that. So I'm just going to select this, and we'll press 1 to go to front view. I'm just going to zoom in here. I'm going to tab into edit mode and select everything. And then I'm just going to press U and I'm going to unwrap project from view so that's just unwrapped straight onto it. And then also right now, this is the teapot material. I want to make this a separate material so that we can add that image. So I'm just going to click right here to duplicate it, and I'm going to call this cup 1. And now what we can do is we can just bring these nodes up a little bit. I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for an image texture. We're just going to drop this right down here. And then we can just click on open to open up that image texture. All right, and here is the air calligraphy. I'm just going to double tap to add that in. All right. Now I want to add this into the color and I want to add it on top of the color here. I don't want to get rid of this color that we have. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for a mix RGB. Just drop the mix RGB right here. Now what we want to do is we want to take this alpha right here and plug it into the factor. And what that's doing is it's telling it that some parts are going to be this color, which is color 1, and then some parts are going to be color 2, which is this one. So now I can just press Z, move my mouse up to go into the rendered view, and you can actually see that now. Now let's just turn this down, and I want to make this kind of a dark brown color. And then also your UV editing might still be a bit messed up. Let's just go ahead and fix the UV editing if that got messed up. Click over on the UV editing tab and just go onto the front view like this. And I'm going to press U and then I'm going to do the project from view. Now here is our texture. We just need to scale it up and then just move it to wherever you want. I want to move it slightly more up here so that we can just see it a little bit better from the camera view. And then also I find that if you squish it down or stretch it a little bit, that actually looks slightly better. Now you might have also noticed that it's on other places of the cup, but we will go ahead and fix that. Okay, let's just go back to the shading tab. Now to make it so it's not on other places of the cup, right here, this repeat, we're going to change this to clip, and that way you'll only see it right there. And then let's just change this color. I want to make it a little bit darker. All right, there we go. Now that is very, very strong right now, and I want to make it a little bit more transparent so you can kind of see it a little bit less, so it's a little bit more faint, and that'll just make it look a little bit more old or rubbed away. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift A, add a color ramp. Just drop the color ramp right here. And then if you click on the white tab and click on the color, the darker you make it, you can see that now that's starting to fade away more and more. So just change it to whatever you want. I want to change it to something like that so you can still see it, but it's a little bit faded. All right, that's looking really great. So let's go ahead and do that for this one as well. So this one, I'm going to click right here. And I'm going to change this to cup 1. Now, I don't want to use the same texture. I want to use a different one. So I'm going to click right here to duplicate the material. Now it's a separate material, and I'm going to call it cup 2. Now I need to UV unwrap this, so I'm just going to press 3 for the side view. We're going to tab into edit mode. 3 for side view. I'm just going to zoom in here and select everything, and I'll press U, and then I'm going to project from view. Now if we go to the UV editing, you can see what it's done. We just need to scale this up so we can see it a lot better. Press 3 for the side view so that you can see it. All right, we'll just scale that kind of into place. Maybe stretch it just a little bit. And then if you look right here, you can see that you can actually start to see some of the texture on the other side. And that's true for this as well. So let's go ahead and fix that. If you tab into edit mode and press Z for wireframe and just select the back of the cup by pressing B for the box select, just select the back of the cup. Here is the back of the cup, and we don't want it to see any of the texture. So we'll just press S to scale it way down, and then just stick it into a transparent area. So now if I go into the material preview, you can't see that at all. So we're going to do the same thing for this one. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, 7 for top view, just go into wireframe, and we're just going to box select the back side because here is the front of it, and then here's the back of it. I'll just press S to scale, G to grab, and just stick it into one of the transparent areas. All right, let's click back on this and we'll go back to the shading tab. So I want to change this out for a different texture, so that's really easy to do. We're just going to click right here to the file icon, and then here is our other one. So the first one that I used was air. I want to use this earth one, so I'm just going to double tap to add that in. All right, let's go into rendered mode. And you can see that because we added in a different texture, now where we place the UV map, that's in the wrong area. So if we just tab back into edit mode, just make sure this whole backside is selected, what we did before, and go back into UV editing. You can see that this is on a different texture right here, so that's getting messed up. So I'll just press G to grab, stick it over here to an alpha channel, and then just click to place that. And there we go. Now that it's been placed on an alpha channel, you can see that you can't really see that at all. You can only see the texture over on this side. All right, let's go back to the shading tab now and just look at that. All right, that's set up. That's all good. If you want to play around with this, make it a little bit more transparent, you could, but I like how that is. All right, now before we render this, there's just one more thing that I want to do to make it a little bit more realistic. I want to add a depth of field. So I'm going to go back to the layout, and then I'm just going to zoom out here and select the camera. Now, right over here on the camera settings, I'm going to turn on the depth of field. Let me just turn that on. And then I want it to be focusing on this cup. So I'm going to click on the focus object and then just use the eyedropper and click on this cup. Now, if we go into the material preview, the f-stop, if you change that value, if you turn it way down, it's going to be very, very blurry. And if you turn up, it's not going to be blurry. So I'm just going to go into rendered mode, just play around with this. I want to just kind of start to get blurry when it gets far away. Something like that looks pretty good. And then one other thing, we need to press Alt-H to unhide this right here. Remember, we hid that at the starting of the tutorial. Let's just go into rendered mode. And I'm actually going to just select this top piece right here. And in rendered mode, if I just press G to grab and then press X on the X-axis, actually Y on the Y-axis, you can see that it's starting to cover up the scene and add a shadow. I just thought it would be kind of nice if it was covering up a little bit of the corner here. So I'll press R to rotate and Z on the Z-axis and then just bring it over. And I just want it to cover up just a tiny bit there on the edge of the scene, just like that. So you can see now it's just covering up a tiny bit of the edge, and I think that looks a little bit nicer. Now over here on the render settings, there's a few things that we can do. On the light paths, if you just open this up, the transparency here, if you turn this too far down, you can see that now it's not going to use any transparency, and that is a problem because it can't use the transparency. So just make sure this is turned up to at least the amount that you need. So I need to turn it up to at least 3. I think I'll just turn it up to 4 just to be safe. But that looks pretty good. Now the sampling, I'll just turn that to 100. If you turn it up higher, then the render is going to look nicer, but don't turn it up too high because then it will take way too long to render. And we will be adding a denoise node into the compositing just to smooth it out. So I think 100 is fine. And then also the resolution here, I'm going to do 1920 by 1920. So just go File and Save, again, just to make sure you've saved your Blender file, and then you can press F12 to render out the final image. All right, there we go. There is the rendered image. Now let's just go over to the compositing tab right here. We're going to click on Use Nodes and then also make sure the backdrop is turned on. Now we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on, so you can press Control and Shift and click on the render layers just to preview that in the background. And also, I don't really need the timeline, so I'll just click here, drag up, drag down, and then let go. All right, now I'm going to add a denoise node to smooth it out because it's pretty rough, so I'll just press Shift A. Search for a denoise node. We'll just drop the denoise node right here and then just plug it up to the viewer and compositing. You can also press V to zoom out the backdrop and then Alt V to zoom in the backdrop. All right, and that is looking really good. So that is the image. If you want to do a little bit of color correction, you could press Shift A and add like an RGB curves. You could also add like a color balance. I like to use RGB curves, so I'm just going to drop the RGB curves right here. And then if you want to make it a little more contrasty, you could turn up the value right here and then just add another point and turn down the value right there. And that'll just pop everything out and make it a little bit more sharp and just make things a little bit more contrasty. And then also if you want to play around with like the red value, just give it a tiny bit more red. That might look a little bit nice. Also the blue value, if you want to add a little bit more blue, you could just play around with that. I think that looks pretty nice. All right, so to save this image, you can press F11, and that's going to jump over to the render result. Just click right here, and then you need to start typing in viewer and just click on the viewer node. And there we go. There's our final image. Now to save this image, just go image and then click on save as. And I'll just save this as final T render. And I'll just save this as a PNG and I'll just save that. All right, so there we go. There is the finished morning tea rendered image. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope it was helpful, and thank you so much for watching. I'm trying to make Blender tutorials and Blender content for a living, so if you'd like to help support what I do and also get the project files for my tutorials, then you can do that over on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. I'll leave the links in the video description. And also, before I forget, if you followed along with this tutorial, you can definitely leave me a link in the description to your final artwork. I'd love to see what you guys create. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in a future tutorial.